My name is Linda Bedinger, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Denver, Colorado. And today I have a tips and tricks video for you. So let's just get started. Okay, so today my tips have to do with working with some of the tools that you have on your stamping desk or your workspace. And I've had a couple of questions recently, and over time several questions from people about how to get some of the glue residue off of some of the material that we work with. And there's a couple of things that one can do to get this done. Now, I don't know about you, but I do get glue everywhere. And what I have found is that there's a couple of things that really work for me. The first of which is alcohol. And what I do is I went to a beauty supply store and I got two items here. I got this bottle, and I think they use these to do color in people's hair at the beauty salon. And these are both called Salon Care, and I got this very large one, and then I got this one, and both of them have the fine tip on them. And someplace this one did have a stopper at one point, but it's gone who knows where over time. And but these bottles are great because you lay them down, and unless they're very, very full, they really don't leak out much. And if you catch them quickly, you can pick them right back up again. And I have baby wipes, and I have this horrible, awful, stained bar rag that I use to do different kinds of things. And then I use painter's tape. Okay, so let's talk about what we use for what. I mostly use my water for cleaning up photopolymer stamps and making sure if my handy wipe or my baby wipe isn't real wet, then I will re-wet it with this water. And it helps particularly on photopolymer. On rubber stamps, on red rubber stamps, they can be cleaned this way with baby wipe. I do use my Stampin' Scrub, and I do use my chamois. And sometimes what I use when I'm doing a video isn't necessarily what I use when I'm doing other kinds of things. And that's because I've got such limited space here that I don't want to have 4 or 5 solutions. So I have a tendency to use a baby wipe when I'm doing a video. You've seen me do that. But when I'm really getting ready to clean things up, I like to use the baby wipe, and I use the alcohol 90% of the time. Now, a woman wrote back to me when I told her that I was using alcohol. She was talking about a particularly badly glued up pair of scissors, and she wrote back and told me that she had tried acetone, and that worked. That's that nail polish remover material, and that works as well. But I prefer to use the alcohol. And what I do is I just pour a little bit out on my surface here, and I use my alcohol and my baby wipes here, and I find that I can get most gluey messes off of my tools pretty easy by using that. Now, you want to be careful because these things are very sharp, and the Stampin' Up! Scissors are very sharp, cut all the way to the tip, and that's part of the reason they're so good. So I do use that. I find sometimes when I'm using a pokey tool or something that has a rubberized or plastic handle, that the alcohol works really well for that as well, to get that sticky residue off there, even on my fingers. If I'm working a lot with, when I was making the peacock cards, because I was using the glue that I poured here on my surface of my mat here, my silicone mat, and I was picking up and doing things with the glue, and I'm going to let that dry a little bit so we can do another demonstration. I found that just taking a little bit of alcohol on my fingers and using a baby wipe, I could get most of the glue residue right off of my hands pretty simply. And I also keep on my desk, and I'm going to grab it, it's full of other things right now, but I keep a little dish or a bowl here, and I try to put my wipe in that and then move it off camera. And that's because if you ever taken a wet wipe and laid it down on your card or a piece of DSP, and it can ruin it. So having a place, a designated place, doesn't have to be a bowl. It can be a piece of wax paper, but put it someplace that you'll keep clear and that you will always put it in the same spot. And then I try to keep that away. Same thing with my tweezers. Again, pick up some alcohol, and these need it right now because this is what I was using when I was doing those peacock cards. And I find that a little bit of alcohol, and then open up the tips and make sure that I get the baby wipe on either side of those, really does a very nice job. Now those are nice and clean, not sticky at all. Same thing with my take a pick tool on the end here, and again on the handle. You can get just about anything off of anything with a little bit of alcohol. So that's what I do with those metal tipped instruments. And then on my stamps, and I don't use alcohol typically on my photopolymers. I use water, and then to condition those, sometimes I'll just open up a package of Versamark and stamp them in there and then just wipe them off a little bit. I think that helps them stay good. Now I have my grid sheet here that I've had laminated, and again I pour a little bit of alcohol out on this, and I've got glue kind of all over this mat, and I find that just a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of alcohol will clean up 90% of the glue that's on my mat here, and then it's nice and clean. And for some reason, I'm one of those people, I get glue everywhere all the time, so I clean up my mat all the time. And then the alcohol dries so nice and fast, then I have a nice surface to go back to work on here, and it doesn't have any glue residue on it. It's nice and clear. Now I put some glue intentionally on this silicone mat, and this silicone mat has got all kinds of little bits and pieces here that it's not pristinely clean anymore. And there's a couple things you can do with that. Now you can wipe that down with alcohol, but I like taking a piece of painter's tape, and I went to the hardware store and got the biggest roll I could find, and I find that I can just wipe down on my silicone mat with this painter's tape, and that little piece of glue that was there, it is gone pretty much. And I can wipe down my mat. You can always take your silicone mat over to the sink and give it a good scrubbing as well, but I can wipe down my mat with a piece of painter's tape here, and there's some pretty stubborn things on this one, so I may have to take again a little bit of alcohol and my baby wipe, and I can clean up the surface here. And again, it dries really fast, And I find that I just work a little bit better if everything is nice and cleaned up from one time to the other. Now, crafting is notoriously a very messy business, and after you've created and done things, you can end up with a workspace that is just cluttered and completely full of all kinds of things. And I don't know about you, but I have to clean up, put everything away, even if I'm going to just take it back out again. I find that it helps me mentally to have things kind of cleared up a little bit. So there's that mat, and that's now pretty clean. It's got everything off of it, and that one's ready to go. Now, I do the same thing. I try to do it when I take my stamps off my blocks, also to go ahead either with water or alcohol, depending on how stubborn the stain is on my blocks, and to keep them clear, because there's nothing more frustrating than going for one to use and you pick it up and it's got all kinds of junk on it. So if I clean it up a little bit every time that I put it away, then I'm relatively assured that when I pull out my block, it's going to be in pretty good shape anyway. So that is part of what I do there. So between my water, my alcohol, my painter's tape, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, and of course my rag for cleaning up things like my blender pens and my water aqua painters, that having something that has a little bit of fiber on it seems to work a little bit better to get the material off. And so now I also do the same thing, and I do this because I work at card classes and other kinds of things and do an awful lot of cutting and scoring and everything, that this is something I do quite often, and that is clean up my my trimmer. And I take my baby wipe and use the look at that, use the pokey tool or your take a pick tool and just run it down that center area there, and invariably you get little bits of glue residue on the surface of your plate, and wiping that down. Now the glue comes off with a little bit of elbow grease, but if you have some trouble, again, the alcohol seems to do the trick, and then I've got a nice clean surface, and I don't have to worry about getting my cardstock stained if I go through this this thing and clear it off. Cleaning underneath here, and cleaning, I don't have any right here on my desk, but sometimes I'll take my blade off and just run it across some tinfoil, and both to clean off the tip and to sharpen a little bit. You can't do a heck of a lot with these blades. I do work them against a little bit of the tinfoil from time to time to sharpen up what I can of them, and I find that it's just easier to work. And I used to have a lot of trouble keeping my my little guide here in the trimmer, and what I found is that when I put my door down here and lock it, that keeps that from sliding out. And I store mine vertically in a little magazine holder right under my desk here, so it's right to hand. But that's it for me. Just a quick tip on cleaning kind of protocols here, and my best friends are these two things here, along with my water, my baby wipe, my dirty, I think it is, oh, what's her name? Calls it her inky rag. I can't think of her name right just this minute, but these are the things that I keep right to hand here. They're never more than a foot away from me in a drawer or on my table, just so that I have quick access and then I have a place for my wet wipes to go to keep them from damaging more of the other work that I've got going. And so that's it today for tips and tricks, and I'll be back soon with more projects for you. Bye!